Okay, welcome everyone. We are going to get started. It is now 2:05. Welcome to March 29th meeting of Plan TAC. We have both virtual and in-person attendees today. Our agenda is going to be reversed this afternoon. We're going to have South Salt Lake present first, followed by Ben. Before we get going on that though, let's take a review of last meeting's minutes, February 22nd. Are there any questions or discussion that we need on those minutes? Okay, I'm seeing none. Is there someone who's willing to give us a motion to approve them?
Ben White with Taylorsville. I make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Ben. Is there a second? Okay, thank you, Chris. Is everyone, is there anyone opposed? Okay, seeing none, everyone who is in agreement to forward this motion, please say aye. Perfect, thank you. We'll go on to our next item, which is item 3 on the agenda. We have South Salt Lake presenting, and we also thank them for the refreshments today. Remind me your name. Oh, it's okay. We have Dennis presenting for us. Go ahead, Dennis. Thank you.
Mike, is this on? Okay. Well, thanks. Well, I'd like to say I was grateful for the opportunity, but you know, I'm here. Do make sure you get some of the refreshments. I called the mayor's office and said, what's a place that represents South Salt Lake that where I should pick up some refreshments for this meeting? And she said, oh, you got to go to Delise Bakery. So it's no, that's her favorite spot. So anyway, I've been with South Salt Lake for about 17 years, and I think the thing that we've worked on probably the most in the last 10, 12, 13 years has been trying to create a downtown in South Salt Lake. When Mayor Wood was elected in 2010, one of the things she realized quickly was that South Salt Lake sort of suffered from an identity crisis. People didn't know where it was, didn't know what it was. In fact, I think to illustrate that, when I accepted the job at South Salt Lake, I told my mom, who grew up in Holiday, graduated from Olympus High School, said, yeah, I'm going to work for South Salt Lake. And she goes, oh, where's that? I was like, well, it's south of Salt Lake. She goes, oh, is it a new city? It's like, no, it's incorporated in 1938, Mom. It's been around longer than you have. So it's, you know. So anyway, that was one of the things she tried to do. So we came up with a new logo and tagline with the city on the move. And since then, we've been moving as quickly as we could. Just wanted to show you, this is kind of the area where our downtown will be. It's got 21st South on the north, I-80 on the south, State Street to I-15 east and west. And what we've also seen in this area is, just as we start talking about doing a downtown here, a lot of redevelopment, a lot of density. This was in fact, one of the first projects I did when I came to South Salt Lake was a sewer line that kind of went through this area. UTA was doing, I can't remember, I don't know all the the tracks lines, but it was the one that goes out to West Valley. We had two dual sewers that went through there, and we combined them and increased the capacity. We had to put in a 33-inch line. And at the time I thought, this will be good. I'll retire long before we have to address this again. Anyway, in the green there, we have some kind of lower density that had about 20 equivalent residential units there per acre. And then in the kind of yellowish, it's about 33. So, and then we didn't even consider the part to the west by I-15. This is really kind of more what we're seeing. A lot, it's 31 units per acre in the yellow, and then another 10 or 15 in the green parts. A lot more density. One of the first things we learned is that we didn't have sewer capacity, and so we had to readdress that line. And right now we're putting in a 42-inch line to be able to get the capacity that we need. So hopefully this time it does work till I retire, right? But we'll see. Water looked good. Storm drain was okay, but sewers where we had a big problem. Also, transportation is an issue. Oh, one thing too I wanted to say about the sewer. We created a public infrastructure district that was one of the things that was important to the mayor, that the ratepayers not have to bear the brunt of a $16 million project to upgrade the sewer. So we created a PID, and developers are the ones responsible for paying for that over time. And then the sewer will transfer back to the city and we'll maintain it. Well, we still have to maintain it, but anyway. Transportation is also a big issue there, is how do we get, this many people into these areas? This will be a lot of mixed use, residential, commercial, office space. There's some plans for hotels. It's just really starting to get off the ground. The first up in the kind of the northeast corner there, you can see the Winco. That was kind of the first thing that went in, sort of got things rolling. And then we've seen a lot of plans coming through. A lot of those projects were kind of on hold as we got the sewer capacity taken care of. But now that that's under construction, they're starting to move on some of these other development projects. And so I think it'll be about a 30-year build out, but we'll have a significant more density there and a better downtown. Some of the transportation issues, the interchange of State Street and I-80. If any of you have been through there in the afternoon or in the morning, you know that it's very congested, really difficult spot. We've been talking to our partners at UDOT. They did complete an environmental impact study. It's been probably 6 years now, but that project sort of died. We need to kind of push that through, because as we see that development, that interchange is only getting worse and worse. Another big congested spot is at 21st South and 3rd West. It's right near the interchange with I-15. We'd like to continue, or at least probably not the way that Salt Lake did it, but continue those bike lanes on 3rd West down. We wouldn't be able to do one as nice as what Salt Lake's done, but at least have a good, safe bike route to get to Parley's Trail. And then just that intersection at 3rd West and 21st South, again, very congested, a lot of activity. It's close to a tracks crossing. Just a lot of work there that needs to be done. We don't have good solutions on that, but we're working on that. And then of course, intersection 21st and State, another one where a lot of congestion, and we've have some ideas on that as things redevelop. There's a 7-Eleven on the corner. If you ask the owner of that 7-Eleven, it's the most profitable 7-Eleven in the entire corporation, but of course they all are, right? So I'm like I said, I have no data to back that up. That's just his claim. But anyway, we've been working hard to try and get this, this downtown established, and we're finally starting to see some of the fruits of our labors on that. It's been a long work, been a long time in progress, but like I say, we've made a lot of progress, and now we're starting to see that area start to build out. Mostly seen a lot down in the southwest corner there by I-80 and I-15. So I talked about the Winco, and then just some other redevelopment scattered in there, but it's a lot more density than what's been there and to this point. So that's, I don't know, that was, Ben said to pick something that we were proud of and we thought engineers might be interested in. I'm proud of it. I don't know if you're interested. So anyway, any questions, we'll take it from there. Yes.
Back in the 70s, I worked in Craftsman Kitchens over there that you have replaced, that was bought out a couple of times.
Yeah.
So I know the area, and what you've done to it has been a real good facelift and uplift for it. but I really miss, I took some pictures, I'm an electrician, so I took some pictures of the old electrical stuff they had in there, fortunately, before they tore the building down, which we will never see again, which is really outdated. It did need some adjustments. I really miss going to Intermountain Fuse, which I had to leave. As an electrician, I used to go there all the time too. But what you've done in those areas has made it really good. My question is, on your bike lanes, did you check with your neighboring cities so they line up with them when you do that, or how? are you
Yeah,
guys
we've
doing
been
that?
trying to coordinate with Salt Lake. I mean, that's one of the things, we have a little bit of Salt Lake has a bike lane on Main Street that they want to continue. We feel like the better location for that is on West Temple. So what we'll do is we want to bring that bike lane across 21st South and then shift over to West Temple, because that's really, at
So
least
come
for
down
the
Main.
uses in our city, it's a better location.
So come down Main in Salt Lake City, jog over on 21st in South Salt Lake.
No,
and
not,
go
not
down.
on 21st. You come past 21st and then jog over probably
Okay.
on Haven Avenue.
Thank you. Yeah, there's no room on 21st for biking. I've tried it.
Yeah, no, bikes on 21st is problematic, but yeah, we're not gonna do that.
Thank you.
Plus through there, we have a weird boundary because it's not at the center line at 21st. We're actually on the south side. So we're right behind, let's see, in this area, we're behind the sidewalk. Because 21st, well, east of State Street is Salt Lake City. From State to 9th West is UDOT, and then west of 9th West is Salt Lake, I believe. I don't know. Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting road there. But we don't really have anything in the road in that area.
John Miller has his hand raised. He's online.
Hey Dennis, quick
Yeah.
question. You said sewer line had to be upsized. Was that the only utility? How about water and power requirements for the higher density? Also, part two, how did you have any funding mechanisms to pay for that, impact fees or anything else?
John, like I said, on the as far as the financial, we created a public infrastructure district to pay for the sewer upgrades. Water, we had enough capacity, so water wasn't an issue. Power, of course, we don't, that there were some power upgrades that needed to be made, but those were, the private developers were the ones that worked those out with Rocky Mountain Power and got that in. See, did I answer everything?
Yep, thanks.
All right, thank you, sir. Ryan. Oh, yeah, let's see. The light rail is about on Second West, so, well, for those of you in the room. And then the Sugar House streetcar is
Oh, sorry about that. Curious about the Transit Redevelopment Agency. I forget the acronym for it.
Yeah, we're working on putting together a whatever proposal, whatever for that. We have IBI, we're working with IBI to do the analysis and study.
Okay.
And that's another point I should have made too, is that we do have a lot of transit opportunities here. And so, those are some, especially at you have the TRAX line and the S line come together. Yeah, kind of right in there. And so that would be a great place to have, we feel like to try and have some kind of, take advantage of that and have some kind of transit hub. So. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dennis. I appreciate it. We will move on to the next item of our agenda, which is item number 2, the TIP program discussion. And that will be pretty much the rest of our meeting. So I'll turn the time over to Ben Rothrich for that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madam Chair. So as Rosie's pulling up these slides, the intent of this meeting here is we will have the opportunity to review the 4 programs that WFRC has that responsibility and opportunity as we coordinate and work with the local governments. But today, as we present this information to you, that's what we are doing. We're presenting it to you, and then this body will make those recommendations that we will take to TransCom. So reminding you of our process, and many of you have seen this multiple times, but we're in the final stages of our project review and evaluation period of time. And then after today's meeting, your recommendations, we will take to TransCom, which will meet at the end of April this year. Once TransCom reviews all the material and reviews your recommendations, they will make the recommendations to the regional council for the projects to be entered into the programs. Wasatch Front will then meet in May, and they will review that information and recommendations and make recommendations to put them into the draft tip, which we will prepare them with UDOT and UTA. Take that information then out to public review and comment during the month of July, and then be back to this body in August to report any comments or any information that might have transpired or improved during the time. And then we go through that approval during August through TransCom and Regional Council, and then it goes to Federal Highways and Federal Transit during that month of September. And then come October 1, we have our new 2024-2029 Transportation Improvement Program. Prior to that approval, we'll be starting on the next one. So just we're grateful for your participation. We need your participation and look forward to working together. So as you're aware, in the Salt Lake area, this is this is where all the projects are, better lack of words to say. But in the Salt Lake area, we had 71 projects that we had the opportunity to evaluate, review on site and work with project sponsors. We had the SDP, there was more than $147 million in request. And we have an available 27 million to program. In the CMAQ, there was almost 57 million in request. We have 11 million to program. TAP was a little more than 21 million with 3.4 million available to program, and the CRP program, or carbon reduction program, brand new. This is our first year with it. We had 42+ million in request and 4.5 available to program. So that's what we're gonna go. The intent here is to fly through first the STP program. We'll walk through these 31 projects very quickly so that you're familiar again with the project. So it's more than just a name on the page. Then what we will do is pass out these tables and we will have that discussion. We'll start that discussion with the staff recommendations. And then we'll turn it over to the chair to walk it through any discussion on the projects and then for approval of the program. Then we'll come back to this point and go through the CMAQ and the carbon reduction program slides. And then we'll go through that discussion and then we'll end up with the TAP. So any questions on where we're gonna go from here? We're gonna go kind of quick. Fantastic. So here we are. I won't go through as much detail as we did in February, but we'll go through each slide. So on the 31 slides, the very first project that we'll review is the Cottonwood Heights. It's a Fort Union Boulevard, reconstruct with minor widening between Pippin Drive and 3160 East, just under a mile in length. The next project is another request from Cottonwood Heights. It's the Fort Union Roadway Cycle Track Project. This is down closer west between Union Park Avenue and 13th East, just over a quarter mile in length. The next project is a request from UDOT. This is in the Draper area on 123rd South at Lone Pink Parkway. This is to address turning movements coming off I-15. The next project is a project request from Draper. This on Fort Street. This is reconstruct a minor widening to get a uniform cross section between 132nd South and 138th South 8/10 of a mile in length. The next project, also in Draper, is on Pioneer Road. This is also a reconstruct, a minor widening between 13th East and 1650 East, just under a half mile. Next project request is in Immigration Canyon. This is for canyon slope mitigation at about 4900 East. We've seen this project before. They have the rock fall that drops down onto the road, making it hazard for the motorist as well as the bicycle and ped use up the canyon. Next project, also in Immigration Canyon. This is for safety improvements between 5655 and 9698, moving up the canyon for various safety improvements, widening the road, moving back the barricades, improving it so that you have bike and ped, minimize the bike and ped interactions. Next project request is in Harriman City. This is on 126 South, Harriman Main Street. This is for a center intersection improvement there at 126 South and Main, giving you additional right turning movement. The next project is in Harriman City. This is on 134 South. This is to widen the facility from the existing 3-lane to a 5-lane cross section. Further east, it'll be a 7-lane cross section. Further west, it'll be a 3-lane cross section. But this particular ask is between 6,000 west and 6,400 west. Next project is also in Harriman City. This is for the new construction of the 7,300 west extension. This is mainly the bridge structure between 130th South and 133rd South. The next project in Holiday, this is for a reconstruct and a complete street on Highland Drive between Arbor Lane and Van Winkle. A little more, well, a little less than 1.5 miles in length, but to get a complete street use of the facility. Next project is in Magna. This is from the Metro Township on 2700 South. This is a safe routes type of improvement on this particular facility. It'll widen the road, give you some curb gutter and sidewalk on the north side of the facility, and give a uniform cross section of the road between 8054 South and 8000 West. Or sorry, that was anyway, west and west. Same road, there we go. Next project, Mill Creek. This is on 13th East. This is a reconstruction of this particular facility between 33rd South and Lorraine Drive, just under a half mile in length. Next project also in Mill Creek. This is on 20th East, or it's a reconstruct with curb gutter and sidewalk between 33rd South to Atkin Avenue, about 3/4 mile. Next request is the UTA. This is the Mid-Valley Connector. This is for electric buses on the Mid-Valley line. As you're aware, that Mid-Valley line runs from the Murray, Utah Murray Station over to the West Valley, there to the Central Station, about 7 miles in length of this BRT. Next project is a request from Salt Lake City, 9th West reconstruction project between North Temple and 600 North, 3/4 mile in length. Next project is a request from UDOT Salt Lake City. It's on Foothill Boulevard or SR 186. This is for ped bike improvements along this facility between 17th South and Laurelhurst Drive. Next request is from UTA. This is the Salt Lake On Route electric bus charging infrastructure. This request is for 2 electric chargers so that the buses have more distribution on their use. Next project is a request from Sandy City. This is on 110th South and 10th East. This is to construct a roundabout at an existing intersection. Next project is also in Sandy. This is on 114th South and 13th East. This is for operational improvements to address turning movements. Next project is at Draper Sandy City request at 114th South on 7th East, also to address the turning movements, dual lefts, both eastbound, northbound, and right turn improvements. The next request is the Davis Salt Lake Connector. This is for construction of this facility between Davis County and Salt Lake City. Next project in South Jordan is on the 4000 West South Jordan Parkway. This is for intersection improvements to put an additional left turning movement on all four legs. Next project is also a South Jordan request at 4000 West. This to create a through U-turn intersection improvement. The next project is UTA. This is for the Transit Technical Education Center. So it's to take an existing facility there, make it into an educational system for the mechanics and the drivers and other UTA personnel. And then we have a request from West Jordan on 90th South. This is for new construction there at the intersection of 64 West and New Bingham Highway. And we have a request from Redwood or West Jordan on Redwood Road at 6720 South. This is also an intersection improvements. This is to install a signal at this intersection. The next one is a request from UTA. This is for the West Side Express bus service. This will go from the intermodal center there at Salt Lake all the way to the old Bingham Highway Station. 29 miles. Whoa. Sorry about that. Let's see. Did we do this? I hit a. Okay. Then we have a request from West Valley City on 13th West. This is to improve this facility to enhance the bike lanes, as also is to control the width of the facility between 40th South and 33rd South. Next project from West Valley is on 7200 West. This is reconstruct with minor widening, improvements to curb gutters, shoulders, and sidewalks as well between 3500 South and Copper Hill Drive. Then we have a request from West Valley City and Taylorsville City on 3900 South. This is mainly for the bike ped improvements on this south, but will also address the reconstruction to the existing facility. And we have this particular project from Salt Lake City, the East Downtown Mobility Hub with electric bus charging stations has been withdrawn from the program. That's all of the STP projects. Was that quick enough? Want to see them in reverse? We can accommodate. So, thanks. So just to run through this table here, we're trying something a little different this year. But the format of the table is such that across the top is the project information. But if you were to take this top project and follow it all the way across, so there, you go to the back side of that sheet and continue to follow that top row all the way across, then you'll get the data and the criteria that was summarized for this project in the evaluation. One thing that we've done different this year than we have in the past is we put the amount of staff recommendation right on the sheet as we initiate our discussion and conversation with you. We'll walk through each of those, but as you look at the project and you look at the points, this is one tool to identify and select the best project for those funds that we have available. There are other things that we utilize to help identify the best project. Not only do we use the data, so this information is extracted from the concept reports that we receive from you. We take that data, we enter it all into a database and we compile and we calculate and we determine what this information is and we put a point to it. But other things that we're looking at and considering are items that are identified out on the field review. When we're out there with those folks from our office, all of you were invited to participate via Zoom. That we had participation this year also from the county, but we had UDOT and UTA and staff. And we go out on the project site and identify projects, highlight their benefits and underline some concerns. Then we also have other relevant professional considerations that we use to help us identify a project that you can't really put a score to. And so those are items that we utilize to identify a good project. Hence, as we're going through, we don't take the top 10 projects that are identified by points, but we'll go through each project and we'll have the reasoning behind the reasons why that project is being recommended from the staff. So there's no questions, we can start. And everyone online has got a copy. Awesome, thank you, Rosie.
Ben?
So, yes.
Ben, I have a question before you do that. I'm not as familiar with last year's recommendations as I should be, but are any of the recommendations this year duplicate projects from last year? As you know, we partially funded a lot last year. Are any of these kind of a second phase funding too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and we'll highlight those as we go through. Thank you, Ben. So the very first project then on this, on the sheet, on row number 1, you have $1.5 million there in the far left corner. This is a project in South Jordan. It's on the intersection there of 4000 West South Jordan Parkway. The request for their initial request was for 1.57 and staff's recommending 1.5 million. This is one of the projects that was partially funded last year. Then we're going down, we skip the next project there in Harriman on 126 South. We'll address a higher priority. As you can, maybe I had to walk through the top of the sheet there. On the column, you'll see a blue column down almost 2/3 of the way across on the right-hand side. That column has the priority, the city's priority on the projects. As you know, when you prepare the concept reports, we ask you how many concept reports are being submitted by the city, and we ask you on the priority of those concept reports submitted, what's the priority? Just, it helps us. It doesn't guarantee that's always going to be our first recommendation, but it gives us an idea of what's important or where the city's focusing. So row number 3 is a project on 900 West. This is a Salt Lake City project. Their request was for $3.2 million. Staff's recommending $3 million. This was also a request from last year. Then we skip row number 4 and we move on to row number 5. This is a request from Cottonwood Heights on Fort Union Boulevard between Pippin Drive and 3160 East. The request was for 3.3+ million and staff is recommending 2.5 million. We skip rows 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and then that moves us on to the next page. The first project on the next page is project number 11. This is a project in West Valley Magna, and this is on 7200 West. This is a reconstruction project. Their request was for $2.4+ million and staff's recommending $2.4 million. This was another project that was recommended last year. The next project, row number 12, is a project in Draper. This is on Pioneer Road. This is 13th East to 1650 East. The request was for $4.1+ million and the staff is recommending $3 million for this project. We then skip rows 13, 14, and 15. That brings us to row number 16. And this is a Mill Creek project on 20th East between 33rd South and East Adkin Avenue, between 33rd South and, I just said that, sorry. They were requesting 7.3+ million and staff's recommending $3 million. The next project is a request from West Jordan City. This is on the intersection there at 90th South between 6400 West and New Bingham Highway. The request was just under $5 million and staff's recommending $2.5 million. Then we skip row number 18 and we go to row number 19, and that brings us to Harriman's 134 or 134 South. This is for roadway widening between 6,000 and 6,400 West. The request was for a little more than 7 million and staff is recommending $3 million. We skip row 20. That brings us to the third page. And we go down to row number 25. This is a request from the Magna Metro Township. This is for the sidewalk on 2700 South between 8054 and 8000 West. The request was for 3.2 plus million. Staff's recommending 3 million. We then skip down to project number 30. And this is an immigration roadway safety between 5655 East and 9698 East. The request was for a little more than $6 million. Staff is recommending $3 million. And I believe that is the last project being recommended by staff. That gives us the total there at the bottom of the fourth page. You can see that gives us a total programmed amount of $26.9 million. The available was $27 million. The requested was $148 million. Any questions on any of these projects? Or any of the staff recommendations? Okay, Madam Chair, for discussion and approval.
No questions. So are we seeing any, is there anyone that needs to bring up any discussion items on the recommended project selections for funding? Okay, I am not seeing anyone. At this point, we'll make a motion to recommend these selected projects and funding amounts to the Transportation Commission. Is there anyone in this group who would be willing to make that motion?
Before a motion, might I ask if others on the group, I personally here in the Salt Lake area would like to see the CMAC projects and recommendations before we make an STP recommendation. I know a lot of entities applied for both CMAC and STP. At least I know UTA did. It seemed like there were a lot of other intersection projects that were on both as well. What, do we want to see what the rest of the TAC thinks, if they want to see that first or not?
Okay, sure. Is that something that we can do, Ben?
It is just so the CMAC and the CRP program are pretty
Together.
closely tied. So it's almost that we'll need to go through all of the full programs before we take any action.
Okay,
That's totally up to this committee.
That or maybe just skip the STP recommendations to last and do the CMAC, CRP, TAP, and then see what's left. Because yeah, I know there's a number of projects either in the CMAC and the STP or the STP and the TAP but I think if they're recommended in that, then they'll fall out of the STP and maybe it's a different discussion.
sure, yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Then with your permission, Madam Chair, what we'll do is we'll go through the CMAC slides, let Kip walk us through those projects, then we'll do the CRP slides, and then Kip will walk us through that program. And then we'll do the TAP slides and have Hugh walk us through those. And then we'll be back to you, Madam Chair. All right, Rosie, number 2. Rosie will have to have an additional refreshment because She's had a lot of patience with us today, but she's done a lot of amazing work, so. Oh, good. Thanks, Dennis.
I'll let you take away my second refreshment for making the suggestion to change things up. So,
All right, so this is the CMAQ program. So there were 15 projects that were submitted in the CMAQ. Is that in your way, Dave? Okay. Of the 15 projects, they totaled a little under $60 million. We had 11 million to program. A couple of those projects withdrew, but we'll go through that. There's all the projects that you had information for. The first one, request errors in Harriman. This is a park and ride facility out on Porter Rockwell Boulevard and Rockwell Park Drive, right off of east of Redwood Road. The next project is a project in Holiday. This is the complete streets improvement. This is for the bike ped facilities portion of that project between Arbor Lane and Van Winkle Express. Next project is the signal optimization project in Holiday. This is for multiple intersections through the Holiday City. Next project is the electric buses for the Mid-Valley Connector with UTA. The next project is the East Downtown Mobility Hub with electric bus charging. This is one project that's been withdrawn for this year's evaluations. Next project is Salt Lake City's expansion on the bike share program. Next project is the intersection improvements in Salt Lake on 500 East and 700 South. This is to convert an existing intersection to a roundabout. Next project is the en-route electric bus charging infrastructure for UTA. This is for 2 chargers. The next one is the West Side Express operating costs. The request is for 3 years of operations, $3 million a year. The next one is no comments there. Who was that? Unless that was you, Merritt, then that's totally fine. But that's, the next project's in Sandy, this on 110th South and 10th East. This is to construct a roundabout in an existing intersection there by Alta High. The next project's in Sandy on 114th South and 13th East, intersection improvements. Next project is Sandy Cities on 90th South, or SR 209. This is for a pedestrian bridge over 90th South. The next project is a joint request from Sandy and Draper on 114th South and 7th East for intersection improvements. Next one is the Davis Salt Lake Connector. This is for construction of that bus facility. Next project is UTA West Side Express. This is for the operations, or excuse me, for the construction. Thank you. That's all of the CMAQ. So Kip. Here, Kip, let us.
CRP, you want me to hand out?
Right, you should be getting 2 sheets. They're going to look very similar, but in the titles, one is for the CMAQ program and the other is for the CRP program. So that's why I wanted to make sure we handed them out separately, so you didn't end up with 2 of one and none of the other. We discussed it a little bit. Okay, I believe everyone has a copy of that. I'm going to begin with the CMAC program. For anybody that's new, I'll review quickly how we rank these and a little bit about the scoring method. So these CMAC projects and congestion reduction program projects, they go through the same review process, the field review and the scoring and everything else, but there's an additional scoring that's critical for the CMAC projects, and they have to demonstrate a reduction in emissions. And that's chiefly what the recommendations are based on, provided there isn't some other disqualifying feature of the project for this program. So under the CMAC program, we're looking at emission reductions for what we call criteria pollutants: carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, volatile organic compounds, and particulate matter. We don't look at CO2 emissions in the CMAC program, but in the carbon reduction program, we're looking exclusively at CO2 emissions. CO2 emissions are a factor of 100 by weight compared to the other emissions. So if we combined them, the CO2 emissions would just dominate the analysis and you wouldn't see what was really going on. This CRP program, carbon reduction program, is new this year. So we're kind of learning how to do this. The approach is very similar between the two programs. It's just focused on different pollutants. And just so you are aware, when we looked at the projects that were submitted, we looked at the CMAC and carbon reduction project proposals jointly, so we could try to find the best fit. Kind of like when you're packing up for a family road trip, you got the trunk open and you bring all the gear out on the front lawn and you start stuffing it in and trying to figure out how everything fits best. So that's what we did with your projects. We threw them all out on the front lawn and went from there. Okay, so on this CMAC sheet that I'm looking at right now, this is a staff recommendation just to kind of initiate the discussion, and you may have some other ideas of what your priorities are or what fits better. But this is, yes, intended to initiate the discussion. So we've recommended funding in one program or another of the CMAC or CRP for 6 of the top 10 projects that were submitted. In some cases, like Sandy submitted multiple projects. So they show up a lot of places, and sometimes we've skipped over some Sandy projects because we've already made some recommendations there. And we were trying to be equitable in how the funds are distributed. So starting at the top, we have that the UTA request for en route charging stations for their electric buses. And they asked for funds for 2 buses. I believe that's, no, not buses, charging stations. And so we've recommended funds for one of them on here, but over on the CRP program, we've recommended the remainder of the request. So we kind of split that one between 2 because it was easy to split 2 distinct chargers. That second project on there is a joint project, Sandy and Draper. It's right on the border. So in some respects, we're considering that a Draper project. And I apologize, that was the 4th project on, oh yeah, the 4th project on there was in Holiday. That got cut off, but that's a Holiday City project. That's going to show up in the CRP program. That's our recommendation anyway. And down to the fifth one, UTA had multiple projects proposed, so we skipped over that. Skipped over the Harriman Park and Ride as well. Recommended funding for Salt Lake Green Bike expansion. The Holiday pedestrian project, they had multiple proposals as well, and we were recommending their signal timing project in the CRP program. Where am I? The UTA Mid-Valley BRT. This is for purchasing 10 e-buses. We recommended partial funding there. I think that's enough for 2 e-buses. And then the last one we were able to get to was the Sandy pedestrian project, a bridge spanning SR 209. That's 90th South, right? So that brings the total of those CMAQ recommendations just over 11 million. Ben says he's good for the other 17,000. He sold a few llamas this year, so he's in good shape. One other note, in those 2 columns in the center, highlighted in the beige, we identify some other ancillary benefits to these projects. It's not totally emission reductions we're looking at. We do consider that there's safety benefits or other considerations that play into those recommendations. So any questions about what was presented here? Okay, then I think then we were going to look at, Ben's going to show slides of the carbon reduction program proposals, and then they'll come back with the recommendation on carbon reduction, which you have before you already. So my further comments will be brief, I think.
Do I? I would, it would detract from the meeting, I'm sure. No good at those either. But anyone else is welcome to add if you have one. Ah, saved by the bell. Here we go. All right. So we're going to review the carbon reduction program. There were 15 projects that were submitted for evaluation and totaling almost $43 million. Pretty good for the first time that we've had this chance with these particular funding source. 4.5 million available. So on those projects, first project would be a request from Compton Heights. It's a Highland Drive protected trail bike bed facility. This is on the east side of the road between Fort Union Boulevard and Valari Avenue. I know I said that wrong. Sorry, Matt. The next project in Harriman, this is the Park and Ride facility that's just east of Redwood Road there on Porter Rockwell Boulevard and Rockwell Park Drive. Next project is the signal optimization project in Holiday at multiple intersections through the city. Next project is the Mid-Valley Connector electric buses. Then we have this project that was withdrawn on the East Downtown Mobility Hub. We have the request from Salt Lake City on the green bike expansion. We have the request for an electric vehicle car sharing program in Salt Lake City. This would be for 2 locations. We have a request for an intersection improvement at 500 East and 700 South in Salt Lake City, converting a regular intersection into a roundabout. We have the en route electric bus charging infrastructure for UTA for 2 chargers. We have an intersection project at Sandy City, just outside of the Alta High School, to convert the intersection into a roundabout. We have a request from Sandy City on the intersection at 114th South and 13th East to address the turning movements. We have a request from Sandy City for a bike ped overpass or bridge over SR 209. We have the Davis Salt Lake Connector Construction Project. We have a request for an intersection improvement there in West Jordan at Redwood Road and 6720 South. This is to put in a signal. We have a request for the construction on the West Side Express. And that's all of the CRP. Kip.
Thanks, Ben. One point I wanted to make about the CMAQ program that was discussed earlier is we had a lot more money this cycle than we normally do because with this new carbon reduction program, Ben worked with Federal Highways to take some of the programs we had already in the queue for CMAQ and move them into the carbon reduction program so they could get funded immediately. And that brought some of CMAQ money back to the table. That would have been funds otherwise we would have missed out on. So that's why we had a little more this time. So for the carbon reduction program, as Ben noted, there was about 4.5 million available. And you can see in that column, second to from the right, we've recommended a little over 4.5 million in projects. The first one on there, you see the other portion of the UTA request for electric charging stations en route. The Sandy project we skipped over because we recommended funding on another Sandy project. And here's where the holiday ATMS project shows up. Just wanted to make sure we didn't fund that under both programs. We didn't. We've recommended funds for the Cottonwood Heights pedestrian trail along Highland Drive. The electric vehicle proposal in Salt Lake wanted to mention that there's a new program becoming available specifically for electric vehicle infrastructure. And so we thought that would be a really great fit for projects like that. And those are funds that we can't use for some of these other types of projects, pedestrian trails and roundabouts and intersection improvements. So with those recommendations, there are some other projects that they were either multiple projects from the same sponsor, or they've been recommended in another pool of funds. And with those recommendations, that comes to just over 4.5 million. And so that's our staff recommendation in the carbon reduction program, again, to initiate discussion and all subject to your recommendation. Thank you. Anything I need to clarify in what's on the sheet before you?
And
Thank you.
for some reason, I wasn't able to pull up the sheet online. It said it was encrypted, but everyone has a link of the spreadsheet.
I'm not sure how I encrypted it, but I'll have to,
That must have
that could
been
come in
me.
handy. If I wanted to do that. Okay.
Thank you, Kip. Rosie, if we can go to the TAP program. All right, wonderful. So in the TAP program, there were 10 projects that were submitted. Those 10 projects requested a little more than $21 million, and we have 3.4 million to program. Of those projects, the first one that we'll look at is the project in Compwood Heights on Highland Drive, this protected trail bike ped facility on the east side of Highland Drive between Fort Union Boulevard and Valari Avenue. The next project in Harriman City, this is the Rose Crest bike lane installation along Road Crest between 134 South and Mountain View corridor, about 2.5 miles. Next project is in Kearns. This is on 4220 West sidewalk. This is to construct missing sidewalks. This is a Safe Routes to School project between 5415 South and 5500 South, about 1/10 of a mile. Next project is in Mill Creek. This is on South Birch Drive. This is a sidewalk ped bike facility to construct sidewalk on the west side of the road and on-street parking on the east side of the road between Upland Drive to 39 South. Next project is in unincorporated Salt Lake County on 10th East. This is to construct missing sidewalk between 86 South and 8514 South. Next project is also in unincorporated Salt Lake County on 8425 South sidewalk. This is Safe Routes to School to construct missing sidewalk between 7th East and 745 East. Next project is a request from West Valley City on 13th West of bike lane. This is to give a uniform cross-section of the road and the installation of continued the bike route improvements between 4,000 South and 3,300 South. Next project also in West Valley City. This is on 39th South. This is the bike lanes. This is a West Valley Taylorsville joint ask on the bike ped improvements between Redwood Road and the Jordan River. Next request is in White City. This is for a route around the Bear Park multi-use path, or a path around the park. Safe Routes to School project between 9520 South, 9720 South. Next project is also in White City. This is on Seagull Lily Crossing at 1300 East. This addresses the crossing on the west leg of this intersection. And that's all of the projects for the TAP. We'll turn it to Hugh.
Thanks for going through those projects, Ben. Looks like everybody now has a copy of this sheet. So similar to the STP, you'll see staff recommended funds on the far left part of the column. Really quickly, before we get into that in the projects, I want to point out we do have two different scoring columns. One is all the blue numbers, which is if it was a capital construction project, it scored a certain way, or if it was a Safe Routes to School project, it scored a certain way, and those are in the green. So that's the difference between the projects highlighted in green and highlighted in blue score slightly differently depending on the application. So to jump into it, we'll start with project number 1, 3900 South, bike lanes and 10-foot trail.
This was a project that is requested 6.2 million. It's a full roadway reconstruction joint project from West Valley and Taylorsville. And due to the limited number of funds in the TAP program, the staff is recommending just over $1.1 million to that project. Going to jump over projects 2 and 3 to get to number 4, which is the Kearns 4220 West Sidewalk Safe Routes to School project. And the request was 122,000 plus, and staff is recommending that full amount. Moving on from there, we will jump over projects 5 and 6 and get to number 7. This is a Seagull Lily crossing at 13th East in White City. A safety project going to a middle school there and improving the intersection for ADA compliance and school crossings. And request was just over $1 million, and staff is recommending that full request. Jumping over the Highland Drive project that Kip was mentioning earlier in his programs, in the CMAC and CRP programs, to project number 9, Harriman Rose Crest bike lane installation, about 2.5 miles of buffered bike lane. Request was for 389,000 plus, and staff is recommending the full amount there. And last project on the list in Mill Creek, Birch Drive, upland to 39th South connection, and improvement with sidewalk, curb and gutter, and ADA ramps. Request was 758 plus, and staff is recommending the full amount on that project. And that is the entirety of the TAP program. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Hugh. Does anyone have questions on the TAP program? Okay, any discussion needed on those items? I had one for item number 7, Seagull Lily and 13th East. Based on our field visit, I know Salt Lake County was going to do a little bit more evaluation on that project cost. Was that already done, or is that still in the works?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for following up on that. The cost that you see here is a reflection of the additional work that's been done to refine that cost. The original cost was maybe 350,000 with a 200 and some odd thousand dollar ask. So you can see it jumped up significantly. You are there, you know how challenging that intersection is, which is reflected in the cost now.
Perfect, thank you. Any other discussion items? Okay, any other discussion on the project recommendations for all TIP program items before we move forward to making a motion? Okay, seeing none. Ben, do we want to recommend CMAC and CRP together at the same time, or do we separate those out?
They'll need separate motions, but you can consider or discuss between them if you want, but separate motions would be preferred.
Okay. All right, let's start with CMAC projects. Is there anyone that is willing to make a motion to recommend approval for the funded CMAC projects to the Transportation Commission?
This is Shane Ellis. I make a motion to recommend approval for these.
Thank you, Shane. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. I appreciate it. This committee will recommend to the Transportation Commission that they fund the listed CMAC projects as selected by this committee. We will move on to make a motion of the CRP projects.
We need to vote on it.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Thank you. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And John, did you have something? I saw your hand go up, or was that just you saying aye?
That was me saying aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we will move on to CRP projects. Is there anyone willing to make a motion?
Brittany, this is Keith of Midvale. I'll make a motion to approve the CRP projects as recommended by WFRC staff.
Thank you, Keith. Is there a second?
Cottonwood Heights will second.
Thank you, Matt. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, these selected recommended projects from W4C will be presented before the Transportation Commission. And now let's move on to TAP projects. Is there anyone willing to make a motion for recommendation to approve the TAP projects?
Mayor Burton, I move.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there a second? Okay, thank you, Kobe. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Those projects will forward a positive motion to the Transportation Commission for recommendation for funding as listed by the WFRC committee. Our last motion that we will make today is on STP project list. Is there someone willing to make a motion on that list of projects?
Ryan Kump, Sandy City. I make a motion to approve the STP projects as presented.
Thank you, Ryan. Is there anyone willing to make or anyone willing to second that?
Yes,
Second.
I'll give it to you, Dennis.
All right, I win, John.
Thank you. Is there anyone that is opposed? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you. Those STP projects as recommended by the WFRC Council will be forwarded to the Transportation Commission. Thank you, everyone. We will now move on to item number 4 of our agenda, which is other business. And so I'll open it up to the floor for anybody who like to bring anything up for discussion. Go ahead, Mayor.
I'll speak up. I mentioned this earlier, but I think it'd be a great idea if we change the name of CRP to something that sounds nicer. That's all I'll say.
I'm not sure we have control over that. Okay. Any other discussion items? Okay, thank you. This concludes the March 29th meeting for TransCom or for TAC meeting. Appreciate everyone in attendance and everyone in favor to adjourn, please say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming, everyone.